Hello gang, Tattooed Biker here with you, and tonight I have a terrifying collection of stories submitted by viewers detailing their true sightings and encounters with the cryptid known as the Dogman. Word of caution though, the second story is rather disturbing and was actually a little hard for me to read, so listener discretion advised on that one. And also, on the last story tonight, it includes an actual photo of the creature captured by the witness at the scene on his cell phone. So stick around, you don't want to miss this one. So now, we're wasting moonlight. Grab your gear and let's ride to Dogman Country.
Number 1. Hey biker, I'm from northwestern Pennsylvania, Clarion County to be exact. This happened a few years ago. In the first story, I was with my grandmother, who is 4'11" and full-blooded Sioux. She's always cranky and, well, she could smack a smile off a grizzly. Well, one night we were sitting at the table eating dinner. Mind you, she also liked her whiskey. So, as we're sitting there at the table, we start hearing these weird grunting sounds coming from outside, kind of like a mixture of a dog and a pig. Well, my grandma didn't react to it, so I just didn't mind it either. As we continued eating, the noises started getting closer to the back door, which was only like 2 feet away from us. My grandma stood up. She grabbed a broom and muttered something. Now, my grandma never spoke in her native language around us kids. She always spoke in English. She threw open the door and I saw a glimpse of it. There aren't any wolves in Pennsylvania, and this thing, it looked huge, standing on 2 legs, and it had a German shepherd's face while growling at my grandma. She started swinging her broom at this wolf creature, and it screamed this god-awful scream that I could feel in my chest. My grandma yelled more in her language, and this thing takes off, and you could see the hair and the muscles under its fur as it ran. That was the last time I saw it. My grandma closed the door, looked at me, and smiled, saying, "We're safe now." I was in shock with tears flowing down my face. I was literally hyperventilating, and I could still hear the screams of the creature in my head a few years later. Now, my second story. It was some time later when I was in my late 20s. I've traveled the states, camped and hiked in places all over northern Idaho, Montana, and even the Cascade Mountains. So one day, I went for a trip about an hour south of Leeper, Pennsylvania. I was out with my Yukon big bird dogs. These 110-pound dogs weren't afraid of anything. They've even chased grizzlies off and a few cougars. They simply had no fear. That was until one day I was pheasant hunting. I bagged 5 pheasants and a couple grouse. As the dogs worked and I bagged my limit for the day, well, they did something I had never seen before. They suddenly cowered behind me, whimpering. I was in shock. These dogs would do anything to protect me. Now we're deep in the Pennsylvania woods, like no one around us for miles. The woods are dense and dark, and I didn't see much, but I could see the ears. They were canine-like. There was something hiding behind a thicket of red brush, and my heart stopped. I had a 12-gauge with me that I could slide 3.5-inch mags in, but I only had 3 rounds due to the stopper. Luckily, we made it out of the woods. As soon as we got back to the truck, I had never seen them dogs so scared. They were shivering and hiding under my seat. They finally calmed down when we got home. Thanks for letting me share. Signed, David. Number 2. Dear Tattooed Biker, this happened in the summer of 1967 near Veracruz, Mexico. That is where I was born. One evening when we came back to our neighborhood, one of the neighbors told my mom that she lost her baby boy, and that it was the 3rd tragedy around that colony within the month. I remember my mom telling my dad that night that she was really scared and wanted us to move as soon as possible. My dad told her that we would. When she was done talking to him, she called me and my brother and gave us instructions to not go outside after dark, no matter what. About 2 nights later, we were celebrating my brother's birthday, and after the celebration, my mom cleaned up the house and put us to sleep. Sometime that night, I woke up to get a drink of water, and I noticed that it was really bright inside the kitchen because the moonlight was coming through the window above the kitchen sink. I was far too small to get a cup from the cupboard, so I pulled a chair from our dining table and put it right in front of the sink. At that moment, I happened to look into my neighbor's house across from our home and noticed that there was someone or something very big in front of their door, and it seemed to be holding something. When I got closer to the window to see what it was holding, I realized that whatever it was standing there was taller than the door. It had pointed ears and no clothing on. When I saw the ears, I jumped, and my chair made a loud noise. Then the thing turned and looked at me, and I saw its face. It looked like a freaking police dog, with bright red eyes and on 2 legs, and what it was holding was a baby. I jumped off the chair and ran to the room to get my baby brother's bed and held him for a long time. I was so scared that I thought that whatever I saw was going to come through our door and take us away. The next morning, we went to church, and our neighbor told my parents that her friend from across our home lost her child the night before and that nobody knew how it happened. When I heard that, I started crying. My mom took me aside and asked me what was wrong with me, and I told her what I'd seen. She told me that we'd be moving soon and to never tell anyone what I saw. And I haven't until now. Thank you for providing a place where I can finally get this story off my chest. Signed, Anonymous. Number 3. Dear Biker, I live in northern Michigan, and when I was 18 years old, I was visiting a friend who lived out in the boonies. She had 20 acres of land, complete with horses, and had no neighbors at all living near her. During the visit, I helped her with some outside chores that took up almost the full day. It was around 6:30 p.m., and we had just finished working. She was around 50 feet away from me when another person chatting, and I was looking for a good place to walk my dog. As I stood there looking at some open field with a large bluff of trees behind it, my eye caught a glimpse of a dark black figure hiding behind some trees. Suddenly it stood upright and seemed curious about me. Now, I had no idea that Dogman existed back then, so my initial thought was, why is someone wearing a fur costume in the middle of nowhere? I stared at it for a while, and it stared back at me. It had a snout like a dog, long, straggly, furry arms, and long-fingered hands. I couldn't see its legs or tail because of the shrubs and the high weeds. Now that I know about the Dogman, I do believe that is what I had witnessed that day. Thanks. Signed, AJ. Number 4. Hey TB, I have a story that I wanted to share with you and your listeners. You see, my uncles were attacked by a creature like this Dogman that you talk about. They were going through a jungle area of Mexico back in the 1970s, and they were driving a big cargo truck at night when something jumped onto the back of the truck. They didn't stop to see what it was because there weren't any lights along that road. My uncle, on the passenger side, looked through the back window and saw this devilish creature that looked like a dog climbing closer to the cabin of the truck. They all said this thing was absolutely huge. My uncles screaming in fear when they saw it, and they said they tried to shake the truck, but it wouldn't fall off until they hit it against a tree on the opposite side of the road. They just kept driving all night to the morning, all freaked out. When they got to a gas station in the closest village, they saw gash marks and hand, but animal prints on the windows where it was trying to get in and on the back of the trailer. They told their story to some of the villagers and farmers, and they told them that dogmen, like demons, were known to roam those areas of the jungle. And they weren't the only ones who had been attacked before. They were so freaked out that the hair on both arms rose, even just telling me their experience. They said that they never drove through Central America besides the cities or village at night, ever again. I wish I could have recorded them telling the stories. Unfortunately, they've passed away already, but even before they died, they stuck with what happened to them, and they never once changed their stories. Thanks for reading. Signed, Christina. Number 5. Hey Biker, I saw the video you posted about dogmen. It came up on my recommended videos, and that led me to your channel and the other encounter videos. The one from Mississippi is what prompted this email. Anyway, I have a few things. The first I have not told a soul about. When I was a kid, probably 8 years old or so, my brother and our parents traveled from Mississippi to California. My aunt and uncle came too, us in a car and them in an RV. We stopped somewhere in west central Texas for the night and all slept in the RV. At some point in the middle of the night, when everyone was sleeping, I woke up feeling strange. I sat up and looked out the window and saw, well, I really don't know what I saw, but it appeared to be men walking on 2 feet, but they had fur and head like wolves. As a late teen, I traveled in Lincoln County, Mississippi. I went to a friend's for the weekend who lived way out of town, down a gravel road with 2 houses and an old still that belonged to my friend's family. So, of course, around midnight, we snuck out and walked to the still about a half-mile away. Now, we were scared that we'd get caught, so we didn't stay long at all. Definitely not long enough for alcohol to cloud our judgment. On the way back, we got maybe 20 yards from her driveway. One side of the road was heavily wooded, and the other had scattered trees with high grass. That's when we heard something moving in the grass and, almost simultaneously, stopped and turned to that direction. Next thing we heard was a growl that scared me worse than I've ever been, and I haven't felt again to this day. We both then took off running, not daring to look back because we could still hear it. We made it inside and never said a word to each other until the next day. We just sat staring. My brother-in-law and his wife lived next door to us, and there's probably 200 yards between our houses and a slim wood line that we cleared a small trail through to go back and forth. At the time, my son was 10, and he and I rode over there on the four-wheeler for something and returned home shortly after. I pulled into the carport at the back of the house, and my son hopped off the bike first. And he said, "Dad, what is that?" Pointing towards the wood line we had just come through. When I turned around, there was something very tall, with hair over its entire body, walking through that wood line. I could only see it in silhouette, but I could see its ears pointing up. It moved kind of slow, but very smooth. I remember thinking that it almost looked like it was floating that it moved so smoothly. But it was walking, I could clearly see that, and on 2 legs. We got my brother-in-law and all of us drove to the back of the property, but we couldn't find anything. Now this one didn't scare me as much as the others. It more amazed me because I was like, I knew it. Not many people believe me, but I still tell the story. Thanks. Signed, Alec. Number 6. Dear Biker, I live near Chisago Lake, Minnesota, and I just wanted to share about the time that I and the kids saw some kind of creature at the edge of a field stalking a group of deer back in 2022, right before sunset around 7 or 8 p.m. And yes, it was moving its head and ears. Whatever it was, it certainly wasn't a tree stump, it was alive. We only captured its attention a few times, and it would look directly at us, but then would immediately turn back to watching the deer. It seemed like it wasn't concerned with us at all, it was just completely fixated on the deer. I know what I sent you is another typical blurry picture, where you can barely make out its features. It was across a large field, and this is the best picture that our phones could get, but if you look closely, you can see its ears and eye and the shape of its head, long arms in the front, and what looks like a mane around its neck, where the hair was longer and thicker. It sure doesn't look like a bear to me, and there aren't any cougars in this area. Not that I know of, anyway. This was out east from Chisago Lake, where a family friend of ours had a pretty terrifying encounter some years back with a creature that walked on 2 legs that were bent backwards and then ran across the road in front of her vehicle. She's so traumatized by the experience that she won't even talk about it. Anyways, it taught me to keep an open mind about things. I actually have 2 more encounters not far from this area, actually. Maybe I'll write back one day and tell those stories too, but for now, I've included that photo we took that day, and I'm just looking for some feedback on what others think it might be, because, well, I have no idea, but it looks pretty weird. Signed, Sherman.
Now, I showed you the original photo. It was honestly hard to make out much, and initially didn't impress me very much, but when I took that photo and ran it through my editing software to lower the contrast and add some light to the shadows, well, now take a look. Tell me what you see.
And there it is. All I have for tonight. So, what did you think about these encounters? I'd sure love to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments down below, but please, keep them respectful, as the submitters will probably read these as well. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. And, as always, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.